Welcome to Blank Tape. I'm Kurt.
And I'm Manson, and this is Volume 2, Track 20. We're in the Endgame now.
Recorded on Thursday, May 23rd, 2019. Put on your headphones and let's jam. Alright, we are here.
Yeah, I'm recording from the new house,
Woohoo!
and we have a desk upstairs, but there's no...
the cops.
We have a fire station. We have a fire station just down the street, as you can hear.
They come to... I was going to say, the cops were coming to take you away because you didn't have your broadcasting license yet for your new house.
Oh, they got me. Let's see. The desk upstairs, it's in a little office area. It's not actually a room. It's kind of like an upstairs landing area.
Oh, okay.
And so it's not really ideal for recording because you can't close it off. So I am instead in a downstairs bedroom, which has nothing except for some paint spill block protection on the ground, which you can hear there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sitting on the floor with my laptop on a box and everything. So temporary recording situation, but it's going to work out just fine.
Yeah, doing it old school, man. Way to keep it rocking. Low tech, punk rock as hell.
I was inspired by our previous episode.
Indeed, that was a pretty awesome episode. Which, by the way, have you finally had a chance to listen to the Holy Spell yet?
I have not. My computer, I have to load the CD into my computer, and the CD drive that I have is in a box somewhere.
Ah, okay.
So it might be a few weeks, but yeah. But I do have it.
Awesome. Yeah,
looking forward to it.
I got my copy from Pete as well, so thank you very much, Pete. And I listened to it, and it's great. Phenomenal. I love it.
Good deal. So what number episode is this that we're on right now?
Well, we're on track 20.
Yep, number 20. Nice round number. We'll get to the main topic when we get to it, but it's a significant number because this is our mid-season finale, right?
Woohoo! Oh, hi, Elvia. Hi, Herbie.
Oh, you can hear him out there?
Yeah, I heard him.
Yeah, so it's our mid-season finale, so after this we're going to take a little summer break, enjoy some time off, and then come back to you in a couple months.
Yeah, when you have a legit office set up.
Yeah.
Well, what you got in your cup tonight?
Right here I have it's a plain Coke Zero, just kind of a standard run-of-the-mill Coke Zero. I brought my last Crawford Bock downstairs too. I might have that if I finish the Coke Zero before we're done, which is probably what's going to happen. So
okay.
Yeah, that's the Astros-inspired Carbach that I had either last week or a couple episodes ago. But yeah,
right. I had one recently as well at the Flying Saucer. So yeah, it was good. I enjoyed the Carbach as well. But tonight
nice.
I'm drinking a Shiner Prickly Pear because I got one of the Heat Wave packs at the store. So made with real cactus fruit, so it's pretty tasty. It's lip smacking good.
Is it like a mix where they have several different kinds for the summer or whatever?
Yeah, the Heat Wave, it's like your standard, Shiner Reunion kind of variety pack. But yeah, it has a couple of the other different ones. But yeah, Prickly Pear is one of the ones that came out with a couple of years ago that it's different and I enjoy it. And there's, whole populations that have subsisted on cactus fruit. So why not use it to make a beer?
Huh. Yeah, for sure. All right, cool.
Indeed. Well, let's see. Now that we know what we're drinking, let's see. Follow up, which I'm sure we will definitely get into because we're going to be recording our big old Patreon episode that we've owed for a while now. So yeah. That'll be good. And then regular homework. I haven't even touched regular homework, so I don't even know if we need to go into regular homework.
There's an exciting development that I have for you, though. There is a...
Really?
There's a free phone app called Unwrap that is just released recently. I think it was a paid app, but the guy open sourced it and made it available for free. And it's a free app where you can run Swift on your iPhone. So I will give you a link to that.
Oh, wow.
And so you can do some learning from the comfort of your own phone at home without having to
Nice.
take any formal courses or anything. So hopefully that'll encourage you to dip your toe a little bit.
Okay, sure, yeah. When I'm on the train and I'm out of Toon Blast Hearts, or I've done all I can in Adventure Communist or the Walking Dead game, then I'll switch over to this Unwrap app and maybe I'll learn something or two.
All right. Yeah, I haven't gotten to my movies yet for our homework. I've been doing the Patreon homework, catching up with that. So I'll get to yours. I'll get to the ones you've assigned me next, which are Trading Places and Breakfast Club on my to watch list. But yeah, that's all the homework I have. All the updates I have.
Okay, sure thing. Let's see. Shout out Mom and Dad, keeping it strong. They've been running solid since February, so they get their shout outs. And of course, all you have to do just to get shouted out is just go to our Patreon and pledge at the dollar level. $12 a year. It's really not that much to be shouted out every episode. So consider doing it and becoming our patron.
If you enjoy the show, it's helpful to just toss a few bucks our way so we can enjoy a coffee or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, probably. We'll be able to pay ourselves back after all the costs that we've put into the show. So it'll just be nice to have something to give us a little bit of a break. Not that we're having to break the bank here, but it's just nice to see a little bit of the fruit of our labors.
Yeah.
And did you notice any corrections in the last episode? Because I found 3 when I was listening back.
No, I didn't have anything. I didn't know of any.
Okay. Well, I missaid Pete's band name from high school. I said Through the Looking Glass. When you actually read the article, the band's name was Through Broken Glass, which sounds much more like a hardcore heavy metal wannabe band name. So Through the Looking Glass sounds like some sort of goth, emo, experimental, avant-garde band name. So totally not in the same style as what Pete was doing back in high school. So got to get that right. I said the Boston Film Festival when I was dropping the news tidbit last time about Not for Resale, the video game documentary produced, directed, made by Kevin J. James. And the film was premiered at the Independent Film Festival Boston. And I made sure to include a link to that website. Like I said, reviews have come in, and everyone's loving it. So hope to be able to watch it myself sometime soon. And then, kind of following on the heels, I know a couple episodes ago I talked about how Destin Sandlin was doing this whole media manipulation series for social media. And then, come to find out, I got tricked by social media when I said that Rodger Moore had recently passed away, when in fact he had passed away on May 23rd, 2017. So exactly 2 years ago today, on this day of recording, is when Sir Rodger Moore actually passed away. So I was tricked by the trolls and the algorithms of the shadow people that pollute Facebook. So, grr, curses.
Yeah, you got to check Wikipedia on that stuff to get your dates.
Yeah, exactly. But, yep, that was all the corrections I had. So, I guess we now go to News Tidbit of the Week. And what you got, Anson?
News tidbits. I got 2. One is that WWDC, the Worldwide Developer Conference of Apple, is coming up very quickly in June.
Okay.
It's just I'm sure I talked about this last year too, but it's a annual convention and conference that Apple does, and it's called the Developer Conference, but it's also kind of a big media event too. On Monday morning will be the keynote presentation where they, it's like I said, because it's developer focused, they'll talk about the new versions of iOS and Mac OS that are coming out, over this year. They've been doing like annual releases. So WWDC keynote is where we find out about, it'll be, I guess, iOS 13, I'm assuming, because we're on 12 right now. And so iOS 13, what new features they're trying to cook up for that, and new stuff that app developers can use. And then the Mac OS, they've been going around with like California names, so it was like Sierra, High Sierra for the mountains, and then Mojave is the current one. So who knows what they'll pick next for the names. So that's coming up in about a week and a couple days. So it's always exciting for us. We always take the time at work to watch it in the conference room and stuff.
Okay. Do you want to hear what I thought the acronym stood for when you first saw it here? Because I thought you were doing like a what would Jesus do? And I was like, what would Didymus call or something like that? But then you explained what it was, and I was like, oh, that makes much more sense as to what Anson is talking about, and not whatever silly thing I'm thinking of in my head.
Is that a person that you named?
Didymus. Didymus. It's one of the other names in the Bible. Like one of the apostles used to be called Didymus or something.
Oh, that's what you say when you're watching TV and then you take a nap and you wake up. Oh, what Didymus?
But
all right. So next up, my news tidbit is this thing that really caught me by surprise. It's there's an old Mac software development company called Panic, and they've made things. They're kind of famous for making Mac apps like Coda and Transmit. They're just like web developer apps and like FTP transfer apps and stuff. And they're kind of famous for having like really high quality software and stuff. Mm-hmm. You might have heard recently, maybe a couple years ago, they got into the games business and they did a game called Firewatch.
Nope, never heard of it.
Oh, yes, that's all right. I think the idea is you're like a forest ranger and you're a fire watcher, so you go up in this tower and you have like a radio and you like look out for fires and stuff, and there's like a story behind it.
Okay.
I never got to play it, unfortunately, but they have that one. They also have one called the Untitled Goose Game, where you're a goose and you walk around a neighborhood causing trouble. And that one has some really funny previews. But I think it's almost released, but not quite yet.
Okay.
But anyway, so this company like is known for making Mac software and a couple of video games in collaboration with some game studios. Mm-hmm. And then what they just released or announced yesterday that it surprised everybody is this little handheld video game console called the Playdate, and it's a yellow Game Boy-like kind of thing, but it's like your modern Game Boy. So the screen is all black and white, but it's like high res, so it looks good. And it has like a D-pad, has A and B, and then it has like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all this kind of stuff. It charges with USB-C. And so if you buy the first version, if you buy this console, which comes out sometime in 2020, I think, you get games like through Wi-Fi, and they're going to give you a new game every week for 12 weeks for like this first season of games that they've developed. And the interesting thing about it is that also, in addition to the D-pad and the A and B buttons, the console has a little crank on the side. So if you like flip it out, you have like this little like fishing line kind of thing that you can like twist. And some games will use it and some games won't. But it's just a kind of a kooky little fun thing like on the side of this little handheld Game Boy console. So I think they said the price is going to be like $150, $150. So not too expensive. But it's really interesting, and I'm curious about it to see like it's kind of cool to think about another little game console, like not like an iPhone thing, but kind of like an intentionally retro but modern, because it's like just a black and white grayscale screen, but it's like got the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and stuff. So it's a very interesting idea, and I was excited to see it, and we'll see if I end up getting one. But cool, congrats to Panic, and good luck on their upcoming console release.
Okay. Yeah, no, it sounds interesting, like a fancy Etch-a-Sketch in a way.
Yeah.
Like a black and white screen, but it's like someone like, those crazy good artists that'll like use the Etch-a-Sketch. I don't know whether they break it open or they're just really good at moving the knobs, and then they can make like the Mona Lisa and the Etch-a-Sketch or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll try and breeze through all mine. Of course, being your resident Catholic, that's pretty much all the news that I've picked up since our last episode. So on our board game episode, the Don't Start a Land War in Asia, I mentioned this Asia Bibi woman who had recently been released from prison in Pakistan for the anti blasphemy laws. Well, she left Pakistan with her family, and she arrived in Canada, and I'm told she was seeking asylum, and she should be now living in Canada to be able to be free to practice her Catholic Christian faith with her other family members that are already there in Canada. So congrats to Mrs. Beebe, and hopefully she can have a safe existence and not worry about anyone wishing her death, which is always a nice thing. I know that I asked you if this was okay to cover, and I make no apologies for the fact that I am a Catholic who abides by the teaching of the church, so hopefully that should give you a clear window into how I feel about this next bit of news. But I know recently several states here in the South and Midwest of the United States, notably like Georgia, Alabama, and Missouri, have passed state-level laws concerning abortion in their states, which I think are good and necessary because obviously this will get the attention of the Supreme Court, and we'll be able to, as a country, revisit the issue of Roe versus Wade, and we'll certainly be able, as a country, hopefully, to have a articulate and rational debate. Not that passion doesn't matter, but I think you could agree with me, Anson, that we live in kind of a day and age now where social media can very much be like a raw nerve of the internet, and passions run high on both sides of various issues. And so, sometimes you just have to take a step back and, assess what you believe and what you think is truth, and what as you're pursuing truth and finding what's right in the world and stuff like that. So, that's why I wanted to.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I was just listening to a podcast earlier today about. It was a two-parter episode of a show called Road Work, which is on the 5x5 network out of Austin, Texas, featuring Dan Benjamin and singer-songwriter, I guess, musician John Roderick. John was talking about like media consumption in the modern world, and how it doesn't encourage people to slow down and all review the same things and like think about them as a community together. Everyone's focused on like the quick updates and like consuming media, like thinking about issues like via consumption of media, rather than like everybody reading the same couple of articles and then like thinking about it and discussing it with their families and stuff. So it's interesting you mentioned it, because I think it's a accurate take, regardless of where you stand.
Exactly.
We don't have slow debates sometimes on these things, and so it just kind of,
Which I think also contributes to the fact of how people sometimes feel about our government. Taking the issue of the current president, moving that aside, because obviously that's going to have a lot of emotional baggage with people on either side. But, people get impatient. They're like, why do we have electoral colleges, and why do things move so slow, and why can't I have instant gratification when it comes to my government? And it's kind of like, well, the founding fathers were Alexander Hamilton and all them kind of had some wisdom behind them, saying like, we know what it's like to live under a monarchy. And maybe if we just take the time to debate things out and, have passion, certainly, but also have reason and logic and, weighing the arguments and stuff like that, then ultimately we would, more times than not, arrive to the correct conclusion, the rightful conclusion on whatever issue, fill in the blank. So, yeah, I know this is, a hot topic issue, and not that we've been necessarily afraid to brush those kind of issues, but no one's written and complained to us yet by email. We've checked, believe us. We've checked to see if we get any hate mail, but thankfully no hate mail. So I guess if you're going to start sending hate mail now, I guess now's a good time as any. to do it. Let's see. Then my last two
visit our Patreon page at Blank Tape Show. Patreon.com/Blank Show.
Yes, show us how much you hate us by giving us dollars.
And this is Blank Tape telling you to go vote. That's all we have to say about that.
Vote with your dollars.
And your ballots.
And then going even further, there's also another big issue related specifically to the Catholic Church in California, and there's a proposed Senate Bill number 360 that has to do with the issue of reporting sexual abuse, rightfully so, as anyone who is in a mandated role to be able to do it. However, this Senate bill in California is not respecting First Amendment rights because it's asking priests to break the seal of confession, which we Catholics view is a very important sacrament in seeking healing and reconciliation with Christ through the mediation of his priest in that sacrament, and by asking priests to violate that and to break Catholic canon law and essentially excommunicate themselves from the church. I know recently they were talking about, we've amended it, but apparently it's still not going far enough. So certainly Bishop Barron and other priests and such throughout California have been articulating the fact that this Senate bill seems to be going against the First Amendment clause about how government shouldn't make impositions into religion. Particularly in this sacramental matter. And then the last bit of news... Yeah, so no, confession, penance, reconciliation, it goes by many names, but it's a very important sacrament, certainly one that I have partaken in.
I heard of confession, I just hadn't heard of the bill. Yeah.
Oh, I see. No, I dig it, and I love it, so I want to make sure that what you say to God stays between you and God. So, and then the last thing that I found was interesting is that in Jerusalem, in the Holy City, there, of course, is one of the major religious sites in Jerusalem called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is a site venerated by Christians all over the world. And there are a couple of different Christian groups that maintain the church, but the church has been in need of funds for renovation. But each of the three groups have been kind of bickering because it seems like they can easily pony up the money, but whoever ponies up the money to lead the restoration efforts, it would be seen as like a power play of like, this church, like the Orthodox Church, is going to make a play to be like, no, this is our church, or the Franciscans as part of the Catholic Church are going to be like, no, this is our church, or the Coptics will be like, no, this is our church. So King Abdullah II, I believe, of Jordan, the King of Jordan, has stepped in as kind of like an intermediary figure, a brother from Islam, and has donated funds to help restore the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, important to Christians in the Holy Land. So kudos to King Jordan, the King of Jordan, for stepping in and helping Christians rebuild this holy site. So that's pretty cool. So see, everyone's like, Christians hate Muslims, but that's not true. I think we can get along with Muslims just fine. And here's a prime example of a Muslim royal figure stepping in to help rebuild a church, which I certainly appreciate.
There was a really interesting documentary we went and saw at the Museum of Natural Science, I think, called Jerusalem, and it was narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch, which is very cool. But it really highlights how it's a city home to like Christians, Jews, and Muslims and stuff. It was very fascinating. So you should go check that out if you're interested.
At the museum or the documentary?
It was years ago, so it might be on Netflix or something. You might be able to watch it online somewhere at this point. But just interesting how it's about a city of like coexisting and stuff.
Oh yeah. I know Casey and I, we watched you remember the actor Crossbones from Captain America?
No.
He was the bad guy in the beginning of Civil War, who had the mask and he was burned and he blew up and stuff.
That was a long time ago.
Okay. Well, anyway, that actor did a limited Netflix series called Fighting. Basically, it was a look at how fighting is and different martial arts, if you will, are handled in different countries. And one of the last episodes in that series is he went to Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, I think. He went to Israel and he learned Krav Maga, and part of this show is he went to, he was on the streets and they made comments about how, it's a very safe city, and because they, well, of course, they have conscription and mandatory service in the military, and it's a very safe city for kids to be running around at 10 o'clock at night and stuff like that. And Krav Maga is kind of like this unifying martial art between Jews, Christians, and Muslims there. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So another win for humanity bonding over shared likes and hobbies.
Right on.
All right, so I think that does it. Oh, that does it for the news tidbit of the week. So I know we have a big topic to cover, but I thought of a fun little mini topic. If offhand, do you know what your summer vacation plans are going to be while we have our little mid-season break?
Yeah, we're going to a wedding. If you recall the cruise episode where I was man overboard.
Yeah,
that was a bachelor/bachelorette party cruise for this wedding. The hammer is upstairs on the ledge where our wedding pictures are going to be.
Aww, hi Elvia.
Hurt says hi. She's doing some assembling.
You can't keep a good wife down.
No, she's Rosie the Riveter right now. So the cruise that we were on was the party cruise for this wedding we're going to in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and that is coming up pretty quickly here in June. So we're going to do that.
Okay.
Elvia has a teaching gig, which is fun. It's at this. It's called AFA. It's like a musical camp, like summer camp for kids, and she's one of the orchestra teachers and stuff, so she got hired to do that for a couple weeks, so she'll be doing that while I'm doing my usual work business. What else? I don't think we really have any other plans besides that, unless I'm missing something. But
I mean, getting a house put together.
Yeah, that happened. Yeah, still a lot to do with that. We have to. She's assembling a bookshelf right now, I think, and we got to put all our books up and clear out the old house and everything. So it's quite a process, but it's a work in progress. So,
all right.
Yeah, how about you?
I know we have a wedding coming up. We have a wedding coming up June 7th. Casey's cousin Kat is getting married, so we'll be going out to that. It's here locally in the Dallas area, so I took off work for that, so that'll be fun. Nice. And then later in June, we're going to be going down to Fredericksburg to go visit Omi and Dad and Mom. Hopefully Mom will be there. Because Casey is getting a brand new car finally, so we're super excited about that. Nice. She is inheriting the Ford Edge from Omi, who has barely driven it. Only drives it to like the grocery store, the gas station, and the church. So it's got, it's still relatively young, not a lot of mileage, no scuffs, no damage, and so Casey's getting a mom car. So we'll be a 2 SUV family. But she gets the newer car because she's the best. So nothing but the best for Casey.
It's a mom car, you said? Why, just because it's an SUV? Or
yeah, eventually, I mean, it'll be filled up with, I'm sure, car seats and sports equipment before too long, so.
All right. I haven't heard of that one before. I'll have to check out what it looks like.
Yeah, it's kind of like an SUV, kind of a vehicle.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Fredericksburg is a lot of fun. We've always enjoyed our time there when we visited.
Well, yeah, we're going to be there in a couple years for the next solar eclipse, right?
Yep, it's on my calendar.
All right, yeah.
What is that, 2024 or something, or
I think so. Yeah. So we'll have to go back. We'll in the future we'll have to go back and listen to this episode and listen to us talk about it. Oh, there we go. Building the
live
bookshelf.
construction. Yeah.
All right. Well, are we ready to dive into the topic that is Avengers Endgame?
Yeah, we should say spoilers for Avengers Endgame for the rest of the episode, right? The whole rest of the show.
Pretty much, I think. Spoiler horn insert here. Beow, beow, beow.
He chose poorly.
It's a trap!
Groovy. Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
It's funny because my parents were my parents' birthdays were recent. I think mom's is in May and dad's in April, and so they were having a little joint birthday date for themselves. Because all the kids are grown up and out of school, out of the house. So
right.
They were going to go see Avengers Endgame and then have dinner, but neither of them had seen Infinity War, and I was like,
no.
Mom, you can't go see Endgame without Infinity War. She's like, well, I printed off a summary from Wikipedia, and she was like, just going to read that or whatever.
Oh boy!
And I was like, no, Mom, you can't do that. So,
Mom, what are you doing, Mom?
They don't have Netflix or anything. We would give them our account if they did, but they don't. I don't think they're going to do that. So I went to a Redbox and rented it for them and made sure they watched Infinity War first. But
good son. What a good son.
I do what I can. All right, so yeah, it's Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, I spent the last day or so trying to remember the movie from one time and write out a rough summary, and I did have to go consult a Wikipedia page to kind of fill in some of the finer details. But I know I went and saw it with Casey. The Province 32 here in the DFW area, the Alumni Association for Find Me Off a Sinfonia, sent out a message probably back in February, March, sometime in that area. And the Alumni Association had rented out an entire theater in Grapevine on the day after it had dropped, the 27th. And so it was like, hey, $10 and you can get a ticket. So I jumped on that opportunity. So I paid $10 and we drove out to
great deal.
Yeah, we drove to Grapevine, and these were like, it was a Cinemark there in Grapevine, and it had the reclinable seats. So Casey and I were in style. I was surrounded by fraternity brothers, and all of us were hooting and hollering and gasping and crying all together.
No.
What about y'all?
It was it was the day before we closed on our house. It was like a Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
And we had both taken off the day to do the house closing, because it's a big meeting where you sit down with the title company and the two realtors or whatever.
Right.
And so we were like, it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. We were like, well, we don't have to be up tomorrow morning, and we've been wanting to go see this movie, so do you want to go? And it was Elvia's idea, and so we went and saw it on a Tuesday night at like 7 or whatever.
Nice.
So yeah, it was just our usual local theater here at the Edwards. And yeah, it was great. So, just us two, on a date. So,
right.
But yeah, it was good.
Okay, so let's see. Now we're gonna systematically go through the movie, and so I try to outline everything. And so, what did you think about that cold open, starting the movie on Hawkeye and getting Hawkeye's perspective of the Thanos snap?
Yeah, I like that. I think it was. It was very well done because I don't think I was expecting it. Like, I was just thinking, like, oh, it's Hawkeye hanging out. I didn't know where they were going with that. And then, of course, the snap happens, off screen or whatever.
Right.
And we know what happened. It just hits him. So I was as surprised as he was when it happened. So I thought it was very effective. Yeah,
we all, because, you saw kind of the moment in some of the trailers that came out where he's teaching his daughter how to shoot. But then as they started dusting off, I could hear everyone starting to gasp. And I was like, oh, no. Like, this is horrible. And just watching them all disappear. And just how how terrifying that must have been for Hawkeye, who's been on, everyone's been like, oh, where's Hawkeye? It's like, well, like they said in the other movies, he's been on house arrest. He took the deal from the government, so he stopped superheroing so he could just be at home with his family. And how terrifying must have that been for him to, like, be out of the loop, not following any of the stuff going on, and, like, just having a normal picnic with his family, and all of a sudden they all get dusted.
Yeah.
So
I think it's funny. There's a verb for it. They call it dusted. But
done and dusted. I know. Funny story. I know we were on our way to the movies, and Casey was trying to pick music to pump us up, and I thought about this as a funny Twitter thing when she selected the piece of music, and it was like, all right, getting ready to go see Avengers Endgame, wife cues up Kansas, Dust in the Wind. And I'm just like, oh, way to hit me right in the gut with that one.
Too soon.
Too soon. Anyway.
That's funny.
But, yeah, and then immediately after that, we go to the immediate aftermath of the snap and the Avengers regrouping. And in coming together and finding out, what happened, the surge of energy, and like we found Thanos, so let's go get him. And they find him on the farm, on his little retirement, his retirement beach house thing. It's like, the villain got what he wanted and he retired to the farm. And how satisfying was it to be like, yes, they finally killed Thanos.
I was super surprised. I really wasn't expecting it. I was like shocked because I wasn't thinking it was going to happen. I thought they would take him to prison or something. I don't know, but yeah, it was a quick turn. I thought it was a very dramatic move, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Right, and the fact that his arms all corroded, and so is the side of his face, and he explains like, oh, I used the powers of the stones to destroy the stones, so you couldn't undo what I did, and just like Thor getting so mad, chopping off his arm and then decapitating him. Just being like, you have that catharsis of like finally being able to kill Thanos, but at the same time you're left hollow because you're like, oh no, there's nothing we can do. Like we are stuck in a world where half of all living things have been erased.
Yeah, I was all hollow. I wasn't satisfied at all. I was like, man, it's a bummer. But yeah.
All right, well, movie's over, I guess. But but yeah, then then the movie took us with showing us what life was like 5 years after the snap had happened and how humanity adjusted. And it seems like, where Thanos made these grand arguments about, oh yeah, killing half the population. And, like, everyone was greater off with it, and children were nice and fat and running around and playing and being happy, and everyone was all kumbaya. And it's like, clearly humanity was not. Like, humans were, like, depressed, and there was that little cameo by one of the Russo brothers as part of the support group that Captain America was leading about, like, coping with the loss of your friends and family, and...
Yeah, I thought that was a really smart idea to like have that in there. It's hard to imagine what it would be like, but like that gave you a glimpse at like what it must have been, like how like desolation you must have felt, like the entire world feeling like
a post-apocalypse. Like we were viewing a post-apocalyptic situation where instead of humanity coming together, just kind of basically doing it like every zombie movie and TV show that I've known, where people are like, nope, no one's moving on, no one is happy that the apocalypse has happened. Mm-hmm. And then how crazy was that little, thank God, that little rat scurried across Scott's van and flipped the quantum tunnel so that Ant-Man could reemerge from the quantum realm.
Yeah, Ratatouille really did his part to save humanity.
I know, that rat was the real MVP of the movie.
I thought it was interesting how much of this movie kind of centered around Ant-Man. I really enjoyed his solo movies and stuff, but then he really kind of like was almost one of the stars of Endgame. So I enjoyed that a lot.
Like, yeah, the crux, I feel like the whole... I mean, I know and we'll talk about it, like Tony Stark may have been the brains that could help figure out how the quantum mechanics would work to be able to travel through the quantum realm to time travel. But, like, without Ant-Man, without Scott Lang and Hank Pym's technology, like, there would have been no way for any of the Avengers to figure out how to deal with, undoing what Thanos did. Mm-hmm. And there was a really interesting video I watched probably a year or so ago. Kyle Hill, I think his name is. He does a series with Nerdist called Because Science. And he was discussing Ant-Man's powers, and when he was talking about the quantum mechanics and the quantum realmy stuff, he mentioned about how physicists theorize about particles, traveling randomly and stuff on this plane of existence, and I guess theoretically how those particles could bounce around in different times. So it was really interesting how those kinds of real life insights into physics came to be in the movie, where it was like, oh, if you just shrink down really small and get to the quantum realm, because what was 5 years in real life was actually just 5 hours for Ant-Man. Like,
right. Uh-huh.
And so because the particles are all traveling wibbly-wobbly through the quantum realm, it's like we could actually pull a time heist. And then, like, the idea of heisting, which is, Ant-Man's pièce de résistance, like, came to the Avengers.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because first Ant-Man was all about a heist. Second one was also still about a heist. So, because of the thief, roguish background of Scott Lang, was able to come back and, hey guys, and then Captain America being like, is this an old recording? Like, because they thought Scott Lang was dead, and
right,
and I'm pretty sure they filmed in Georgia, because looking at the shot where he's rolling the wagon with all of his stuff that he got from the storage container, where by the way, cameo of Ken Jeong, the comedian, as the security guard watching the storage place. And he's going by all these houses that are boarded up, and I was like, this seriously looks like a shot out of The Walking Dead. Like, it was kind of unreal to me, because I was like, I know in Georgia's where they filmed The Walking Dead, and where a lot of these Marvel movies and other movies are being filmed because of all the tax incentives. I was like, this straight up looks like a shot out of The Walking Dead. And how crazy was that? Scott Lang's like, I'm dead, but I'm not really dead, and he has to see his daughter who's grown up without him, and that emotional reuniting of father and daughter. So, but before let's keep the train going, because there's so much.
Yeah.
So reuniting.
We don't have to touch every past, or we don't have to touch every event, I guess, if there's
something we're talking about.
If there's ones that stood out to us, yeah. But let's just recap quickly what's going on. What's more in Stark?
Okay, so Ant-Man reunites with the Avengers at Avengers HQ and lets them know, hey, I was in the quantum realm. We could time heist our way to get the Infinity Stones back and get life back to the way it was. Mm-hmm. And so they go to visit Tony at his little lakeside house, which I think they talked about in other movies. Like, he was like, oh yeah, that's my plan with Pepper, is Pepper and I'll retire to the lake or something. And so by this time, 5 years later, Pepper and Tony have gotten married, and they have a daughter, and her name is Morgan Stark.
That's Morgan. Okay, yeah.
And, of course, we first see her wearing an Iron Man helmet and wearing one of the Iron Man gloves. And so people are already like, oh no, does that mean Morgan Stark is going to be like a new Iron Man type figure in the future? So people are already saying that. So we got to meet Morgan Stark, who is cute and adorable, and also really smart too, because one of the poignant lines is, I think, Tony Stark's telling her a bedtime story, or he tells her like a really short one so she'll go to bed. And he says, I love you a ton. And then she replies, I love you 3,000, which I didn't catch the number at the first, but then when I listened back to some commentary from other people, I was like, oh, wow.
2,000 pounds is a ton?
Yeah. So I was like,
Okay.
wow, she's a really smart 5-year-old because, like, I don't know how many 5-year-olds know that a ton is 2,000 pounds, and then she goes, I love you 3,000.
Nice. Huh? I didn't catch that either. That's cool.
Yeah. So, so we have cute, her, adorable little Morgan, and then, you know, Tony's wrestling with this idea of the time traveling stuff, and he looks at a picture of Spider-Man, and he's like, all right, well, let me figure it out, and he does it, and he's like, hot dog, I figured it out, and, Ant-Man and, Cap and, Black Widow, they go to find Hulk, who by this time is now finally reconciled off-screen between the Hulk and Bruce Banner. So now we have Intelligent Hulk, or Professor Hulk. So
Yeah.
it's Hulk's body, but it's Professor Banner's mind and voice coming out. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool.
Speaking of kids, I totally forgot a news item. My sister Beth just had a daughter yesterday.
Mazeltov. Oh,
Yeah.
yesterday?
Yeah, like yesterday.
Wow,
That happened.
congratulations, you're an uncle again.
Yeah. Yesterday or today, yeah. So that's their second. Anyway, sorry. News item.
Well, you better
Interjected
go
in the
visit her and go see that new niece of yours.
Yeah, we're gonna go visit as soon as they say we can. So anyway,
Okay.
side note.
Side note.
Yeah.
And then after we meet Professor Hulk, we finally get a chance to meet Thor, who's had to deal with the fact that he didn't kill Thanos like he wanted to. And so they travel to Norway, and there's a new community of Asgardians living on Earth in a little town of New Asgard. And we see Thor in a fat suit. We see Chris Hemsworth wearing a fat suit. And he dresses very much like a younger Jeff Bridges, a.k.a. the Dude King of New Asgard, because he's like the Big Lebowski. And all he's doing is just drinking beer and playing Fortnite with Korg and Meek. And
That was funny.
yeah, he yells at a kid on Fortnite who's being mean to his buddy.
Yeah.
I blanked on the name. But yeah, then they managed to convince Thor to come back to Avengers HQ. And then meanwhile, Black Widow is retrieving Ronin, aka Edgy Hawkeye, who's using like a katana and like killing Yakuza bad guys and stuff. And so it's like, you know, they're getting the band back together and they're piecing the events of what they know so that way they can figure out in the timeline where each of the Infinity Stones were. Most notably, when they recall the Battle of New York back in the first Avengers movie, 2012, there were 3 stones in New York. And then they think back to Asgard in like 2014, I think, when there was the Ether who was present inside Dr. Jane Foster when they were in Asgard in the events of Thor the Dark World. And then they went back to the time of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Well, sorry, the Ether one may have been 2012. And then Guardians of the Galaxy 2014, where they have to go to the first planet that Star-Lord is on to go get the Power Stone. And then they have to go to Vormir to go get the Soul Stone. So they
I thought this was a very clever way to kind of like pay tribute to all the old movies.
Yeah.
If you had told me at the beginning, like, if you had told me before I saw it, like, oh, the plot is it's going to be time travel and they're going to go in the past to all the old movies, I would have been like, oh man, that's stupid. Like, that's so lame. Like, what a cop out. But I think the way they put it together, both with saying like all the characters saying, oh no, time travel will never work. You know, I think it's called lamp shading. It's the TV trope where you like, if something seems really obvious that the audience is not going to believe, you like call it out in the movie itself or in the TV show itself, and it means you're like, you know, if they had been like, oh yeah, time travel, let's do it, then it would have been kind of silly. But because they were all protesting it, they were like, no, that's stupid. You know, like we're not going to do Back to the Future. Like it made it more believable
and they
for
called
us
out
as the
all
audience.
the movies. They were like, that's stupid. That's not how time travel works.
Yeah, so I thought it was clever that they did it that way, and it was a good homage to all the past films without being like super, like cheap, like just playing old clips. You know, I thought they interwove it very well. So I approved that very much.
I think some comedians commented about, like, they got you to care about Thor the Dark World, which everyone is like, ew, Thor the Dark World. But it's like, yeah, no, like, Thor the Dark World is important. Now you know why. Mm-hmm. So it was, and then of course, you know, as they're figuring out how to perfect time travel, there's a very funny sequence where Professor Hulk is experimenting with Ant-Man, and so Ant-Man keeps coming back in time, and one minute he's an old man, then he's like a teenager, a prepubescent teenage boy, and then he's a baby, and it's really funny before they figure out how they're going to get all of the devices to work to be able to travel through the quantum realm. Mm-hmm. And then the first probably big act of this movie is revisiting Avengers Battle of New York, the first Guardians movie, and then Thor the Dark World Asgard from these new perspectives. And I wrote down a couple of the interesting moments that were kind of worthwhile. And I didn't know, since I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking, if you had some opinions on some of these notes that I wrote down.
Yeah, I think the one that stands out to me was this. I got as far as individual Marvel films from this series go, I think Doctor Strange is definitely like a top favorite.
Right. And
so I thought it was really awesome to have that little scene with Bruce Banner going and talking to the Ancient One. And of course, what's she going to do but like take him out of his, you know, go to the astral form. So first thing she does is knock him out, and he's like, oh man. But then, you know, they put the Hulk in the corner asleep with the newspaper over his eyes or whatever, and then they have a little chat. I thought it was a really cool scene because I love Doctor Strange, and I thought it was cool how she's like, oh, you're 5 years too early. Stephen Strange is performing surgery in that hospital. You know, it's just just cool characters, you know, so that was cool.
And how she kind of explains how timelines work in the Marvel Universe, and how divergent timelines, which calls back that line from Baron Mordo about, like, you know, when he was getting mad at Doctor Strange for messing with the Time Stone, because he's like, you know, temporal anomalies, divergent timelines, and he starts freaking out when Doctor Strange is using the Time Stone to, you know, to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And then how Banner, like, you know, makes that plea with the Ancient One about, like, well, yeah, but Steven gave up the Time Stone, and then she's like, oh, well, he's the best of us. He's the best Sorcerer Supreme. And so she's like, so it, like, that convinces her to be like, all right, I will give you the Time Stone. And so Hulk is like, got one down. And then they go, so they're back at Avengers Tower, and they're apprehending Loki. And Iron Man and Ant-Man are talking to each other, and Ant-Man makes a comment about, like what? Iron Man's like, man, Cap, that outfit does not do you any justice. And then like Ant-Man's like, that's America's ass. And then later there's a cat fight where Captain America has to fight Captain America because he's got the scepter, and he thinks that it's Loki in disguise. But they fight each other. Then old Captain America is on the ground with his butt up, and future Captain America looks down at him, and he goes, that is America's ass. And so it was really funny to hear Captain America kind of letting loose and letting a few sort of kind of curse words get out. And then, of course, the ultimate fan service in the elevator, which was a callback to the Winter Soldier, where he has to fight everyone in the elevator. And he's like, I need the scepter. And they're like, sir, we can't let you do that. And then he leans over and he goes, Hail Hydra, which is a callback to one of the most recent issues of Captain America, where it's like, oh, Captain America was a sleeper agent for Hydra. And so that was really cool how Captain America was able to exploit his knowledge going forward of what was going to happen in the events of the Winter Soldier to be like, oh, I know that S.H.I.E.L.D's already compromised by Hydra, so if I just let loose that I'm part of Hydra, they'll just give me the scepter.
Yeah, I thought that was clever, and it also reminded me of all those Hail Hydra memes that came out back when that movie was just released.
Right.
People like whispering into each other's ears like, oh, Hail Hydra. You know, it was just funny.
And then speaking of divergent timelines, everyone was wondering how Loki was going to be able to get his own show on Disney+. Well, when Ant-Man goes to zap Iron Man's device to make him have like a mild heart attack or whatever, in the kerfuffle as they're trying to secure the Tesseract, Hulk, who is told to take the stairs, comes busting out and knocks the Tesseract out of future Iron Man's hands. It slides over to Loki. Loki grabs it and bamps out. And so we have a divergent timeline, and so that's probably most likely going to be the explanation of how we have a Disney Plus streaming show on Loki.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so Tom Hiddleston.
Is Tom Hiddleston going to be in it?
Yep, as far as I know.
Oh, awesome. That's cool.
Yep. And
maybe I'll have to get Disney Plus. They got me.
Yeah, I know, me too. Yeah, if they're going to have all the Disney movies and shows on it, like, you kidding me?
Yeah.
Revisiting Morag, where Star-Lord's dancing around and singing along to Come and Get Your Love by Redbone. And War Machine and Nebula are watching him, and they're like, this guy's an idiot. And then War Machine just cold clocks Star-Lord in the face so they can go steal the Power Stone. And then from there, that's when Black Widow and Ronan, Hawkeye, take the spaceship, and they go to fly to Vormir. And so that's where they...
The moment...
Oh.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I thought this next moment where Thor meets his mom and gets his hammer back was really a sweet moment, too, you know.
Yeah, because until this point, Freya, you know, like in the Thor movies, it was like, oh, Thor's mom is there, but she didn't, you know, she wasn't able to, the script didn't allow her to be super cool like she is. And this movie, I think, kind of made up for it, where she was like, you're not my Thor. And he's like, oh, of course I am. And she's like, please, I was raised by witches. I know, I can see true sight, basically. And he's like, all right, I'm from the future and I failed. And then she has to remind him about, like, it's in our failures that we really grow and find our strength. And then after Rocket secures the ether out of Jane Foster, he's like, wait, let me see. And he, like, holds out his hand and he's like, wait for it. And then a restored, in this timeline, Mjolnir comes to him and he's like, yes, I am worthy. And that was so nice.
Yeah, that was great. I definitely agree. It kind of redeemed... Thor got some redemption, or his movies did, you know.
Yeah,
so
and especially his mom. It was really nice because he had to, you know, Thor lost his father, he lost his brother, he had to have his sister killed, he lost Asgard, and he didn't kill Thanos, so, like, I'm sure Thor was in a very rock-bottom emotional place, so I'm sure having this final resolution with his mom, being able to get to say goodbye because, you know, this is the day that she dies. And so he finally gets to say goodbye to her when he didn't have that chance before.
Yeah.
So, and then...
All right. Moving right along. What's
Yeah. Oh, man. Hawkeye and Black Widow having to fight each other on Vormir because, you know, Red Skull is having to tell them you have to sacrifice the thing you love. And basically, Hawkeye and Black Widow fight each other to be the one that throws themselves off the cliff.
Right.
And then just how, after all the fighting and scrambling, Black Widow decides to sacrifice herself because she's like, Bart, you know, Clint, you've got a family, and I don't. And so she's like, let me do this. And just how selfless Black Widow was and, you know, was key to being able to secure that last Infinity Stone that they needed. So...
Do you think she's actually gone? I saw some people talking about how they could bring her back or something, but
which I think people say if you die in the process of getting the Soul Stone, your soul becomes part of the Soul Stone. So, I mean, it's possible that like future Gamora and future Black Widow are inside the Soul Stone, and maybe there's a way to bring them back. But more on Gamora later for sure. And then once the kerfuffle with Loki happens, Cap and Iron Man have to team up, and they're like, okay, there's one other place we can check where I know that the Tesseract is going to be. And it's a place where we can get more Pym particles because we only had enough for like one jump. And because we messed up now, we can't get it.
Why didn't they first all go back to get more Pym particles and then like... have multiple attempts. You know, I was going to say that should have been their first move, but
they didn't know. They thought they had meticulously planned out this heist. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
but still, even I would assume that it was like I would say, what are the odds that we're going to get this on our first shot? You know, like why don't we have however many PIM particles? Let's use our abundance of particles to get more particles first, and then do the thing. You know, that's how I would have thought of it. But that's
right.
I'll forgive that.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, meanwhile on the ranch, Thanos in the past and past Gamora and past Nebula have all been alerted from tech interference because there's two Nebulas coexisting in the past. Mm-hmm. And so past Nebula starts receiving the audio-visual transmissions from her future self. And so now Thanos is getting a peek into the future, kind of like an oracle, if you will. And so he starts seeing the future, and he starts learning about, he's like, I succeeded, because this is at the point where he's starting his conquest to start getting all the stones. And he's like, see, I succeeded. These people from the future are meddling here in the past, so that means that I've succeeded. So now I got to learn all I can so I can ensure that what I do stays. Yeah.
I want to highlight the the Agent Carter stuff, because I do watch Agent Carter, or I did. It's a canceled show now, and I have 2 more episodes to go, but it was good to see Peggy Carter alive in the past then, and then, of course, I did recognize Jarvis as the driver. That's the same guy who was in Agent Carter, so I was happy to see he got a little movie role after playing the Jarvis in the TV show, too. So another sweet moment between parents, is Tony and his dad talking, too.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Because, of course, Tony's dad and mom were both assassinated by a mind-controlled Winter Soldier back in the 1990s. So it was really nice having this moment where Howard Stark has just discovered that he's going to be a new dad, and Tony Stark at this point already has a 5-year-old, and so how he is able to give his father advice on what it's like being a dad. And so that really, I agree, it was really sweet. And of course we got our final Stan Lee cameo as well, as he's speeding in a car, and saying make peace, make love, not war, as he's speeding in his car in front of the base.
Yeah.
And so it was also nice to see this base as well, because of course this was the same base from Captain America: The First Avenger, and it was also the base in the Winter Soldier where Arnim Zola, the Hydra computer guy, was Hydra destroyed back in 2014.
I remember that. Huh.
So yeah, also when we saw young Hank Pym, if you noticed on his desk, that helmet on his desk that looked like an ant helmet, that was directly taken from the comics, because that's what the Ant-Man helmet used to be. So I thought that was neat too.
Oh, I missed it. Next time.
Yeah, and they're like, it's like they distract Hank. Someone's here with the delivery of stuff. I think they messed some stuff up, and he's like, no, and he runs off to go deal with the issue. But all in all, suffice to say, they get the last of what they need. They get the Tesseract from the 1970s now instead of 2012, and then they bring it all back, and they Tony Stark builds a new gauntlet out of his nanotech, and puts all the stones in the new gauntlet, and then Professor Banner gives some exposition about how the stones emit gamma radiation, and so he makes a comment about how I was made for this. And so then Thanos puts on the Hulk puts on the gauntlet, and then Hulk snap, and so he snaps the world back to the way that it was. And it's a really beautiful scene. Ant-Man steps out of the room, and he's looking at birds tweeting, and at this same time, Thanos' ship is coming out of the quantum realm and zooming out into the sky above HQ. And as he's looking at these birds and seeing sunlight, all of a sudden it's just a missile barrage, and the whole Avengers headquarters gets leveled.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we had a Trojan horse, because past Nebula changed out one of her head plates so she looked like Nebula from the future, and that's how she was able to bring Thanos and his army from the past into the future.
Yep.
So, that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Kind of interesting how in this film, in the Guardians film, it was Gamora having to reach out to her sister to try and be like, I don't hate you, I love you. And in this movie, it's like Nebula from the future is having to reach out to Gamora of the past to be like, look, I've changed. I am a Nebula from the future. I've learned my lesson. We've reconciled. We're sisters. And so that was kind of interesting. And like Nebula has to murder her past self, which I'm sure is metaphorical on more than one level of how she had to like, she killed her old self to be like, no, I am this new Nebula. I'm not a pawn of Thanos anymore.
I gotta see this again. There's so much stuff in there.
I know, so many layers, and, you know, we gotta keep going. And then we get to the epic battle.
Yeah, I remember hearing somewhere that, like, wasn't it in that, what was the movie where Captain America, like, briefly picks up the hammer, like, just for a split second, and then Thor's like, oh, wait, what? Wasn't that,
It was in Age of Ultron. At the very beginning of Age of Ultron, they're having a party for World War II vets, and so they're all drunk or drinking, and they're like, and then Thor's like, you know, only the worthy can pick up my hammer, and like Captain America is straining, but the hammer moves like half an inch or something, and Thor like looks at him like, oh my gosh, could he really do it? But then it doesn't move after that. So the barrage has happened, the dust is cleared. You know, Ant-Man's having to rescue Hulk and company that are trapped underneath the Rebel. And Thanos comes down with his weird double blade a la Darth Maul. So OG's Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man all step forward, and they're like, we're going to kick your butt. And Thanos is like, oh, I've learned all about the future now, and I know that I win. And before, I was all like, well, I'm just going to snap out half the universe and then, you know, things will be better. But now I realize, like, you guys will never let that happen. So I'm just going to kill everything and then I'm going to start over from scratch and people will never know that I did what I did.
Yeah.
So now it's like we really see Thanos' true intentions all along.
Also, I just saw here in the notes where you said it wasn't Age of Ultron. I should have read it. Anyway. Yeah.
And so they're fighting. So they're all fighting, they're trading blows, it's epic. Captain America's shield gets broken by Thanos' sword thing. And then at one point, like, Thor is fighting with, like, Stormbreaker and Mjolnir together, which is badass and amazing. And then, like, you know, Steve Rogers is like, oh no, what's he gonna do? And then, like, all of a sudden, Mjolnir flies into Captain America's hands and he's able to wield it. And everyone in my theater was just like, yeah. So, what did you think when that happened? Like, because before it was like, oh, he barely moved it. But now it's like Captain America's swinging Mjolnir around like a baseball bat. Yeah,
it was a pretty quick change from him. I guess he learned how to use it instantly, I guess. But yeah, I was in support of it, totally. That was exciting moment.
And then, let's see, then we get to, so, like, they're trading blows, and, like, it's actually a fairly even level because Thanos isn't, like, fully powered up yet. He's an Eternal, but he's not an Eternal with a major power boost from an Infinity Gauntlet.
Right.
So then, all of a sudden, we hear Falcon on your left, which is a callback to Winter Soldier when he first meets Sam Wilson and Captain America's running past Sam all the time. And so we hear on your left. And then all of a sudden Doctor Strange portals start popping up and we start seeing other sorcerers. We start seeing the restored Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, the armies of Wakanda and Asgard and Ravagers as well. And they all start showing up. Because Thanos, by this point, has called his army, and he's like, well, before it was just going to be business, but now I'm going to have pleasure in wiping you out. And so then, like, in response to that, like, the good guy army shows up, and then you see that shot where it's the half-broken shield, and Cap's tighten the straps. He gets Mjolnir back in his hand, and he turns to everyone assembled, and he goes, Avengers Assemble, which he's never said up until this point, the catchphrase that everyone's been waiting for. And so then the epic battle starts between the armies. There was a part where they teased it, I think, at the... Oh, yeah, sorry. There was a part where they teased it, I think, at the end of this movies. Sorry, at the end of one of the movies, he was like, Avengers, and then they cut it off. He never actually said assemble. I can't remember which one that was. Right. But the other thing I was going to ask Probably the end... probably the end of the Civil War or no, Age of Ultron probably is when they said it.
Okay.
Because he's talking to the new recruits.
Yeah. Question I had for you is, what about Vision? Why didn't Vision come back? Or did he and I missed it?
I did not see Vision, and I think it goes to support, because I know people were like, oh, maybe Shuri finished uploading his consciousness to the computer, but it looks like that maybe that didn't happen, and because I guess Vision was an android, so he was like, maybe more, he was more machine than man, maybe he didn't count as organic life. So there wasn't necessarily like an organic body and soul to restore. That seems to be getting into a metaphysical conversation, but yeah, I didn't see Vision at all. But there may be something for him in the future, like, maybe if Professor Hulk decides to rebuild Vision, that might be something for the future. But otherwise, no, Vision, I did not see Vision, and I don't think he actively made a return to this movie.
Yeah, he was one of my favorites from back then, so I'm kind of bummed now that I remember that, but oh well.
Yeah. I thought it was really funny during the fighting how, Captain gives Ant-Man and Wasp the order to start firing up the quantum tunnel so they could suck Thanos back into the past, or into the quantum realm at least, and trap him there. Mm-hmm. And I liked how Wasp was like, sure thing, Cap. And if you remember from Ant-Man and Wasp, she kind of gave Scott Lang some crap because he was like, Cap needed me. And she's like, Cap? And he's like, Captain America. And so I thought that was really funny how she was like, sure thing, Cap. And it's like a moment where like Ant-Man could easily give her a side eye and be like, dude, you just gave me grief. Like,
yeah.
Why? Why do you get to do it and I don't get in trouble? And then, of course, we have... Yeah. And then we have the epic moment where, like, the battle is like, oh, we don't know how it's going to turn out. Like, either side. And then all of a sudden, Captain Marvel just swarms in and just, like, a torpedo, like, obliterates Thanos' warship. Like, that was pretty cool.
Yes, I think it's pretty cool. However, my complaint from Captain Marvel still applies. I think she's overpowered, and I think the excuse as, like, I was going to say at the beginning of this movie, she's like, oh, I'm going to be doing this, this, and this, so you might not see me for a while. It's like, okay, the writers just wanted to give her an excuse so she's not, like, around for the entire movie. I don't know. I just thought it was... I still have trouble with her character because she's, like, so...
that Brie Larson filmed this film before she did her origin film. So, the writers didn't know what was going to happen in her origin film. They, like, had ideas of what she was going to do in this movie, but they didn't want to... The understanding that I heard from the Russo brothers was that they didn't want to overstep their bounds and really write for Captain Marvel when she was going to get her own origin story, but she had to film this one first. So that's probably why she's more stoic in this movie, and you don't get to see her come into her own. But by this point, she's already mastered her powers. I mean, she's a figure on a cosmic level. So, obviously she's taking care of other planets. And then when this happens, she swarms in and just, like, obliterates the ship and is able to handle Thanos solo, for a bit. And I think at one point she tried to use the gauntlet or hold on to the gauntlet to get it over to the quantum tunnel. And let's see, there is a badass sequence where Spider-Man gets a hold of the gauntlet, and he's trying to get it over to Iron Man or Captain or whoever, and all of a sudden, all the ladies step up, and you see all the women of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You see Pepper Potts in an Iron Man suit, and you see Valkyrie riding a Pegasus, and you see Captain Marvel, and you see Scarlet Witch, and all of them, and they all are like tag teaming, like, fighting off Okoye and all of them, Shuri, fighting off guys along the way so that Peter Parker can help get the gauntlet along the path. And then, of course, Doctor Strange and Iron Man have some very telling moments during these battle scenes where Iron Man stops for a second and asks Doctor Strange if this is the one, and he's like, "Oh, I can't tell you because if I do, then it might not happen." And then we finally get to that climax where things are looking dire, and Iron Man looks over to Doctor Strange, and all Doctor Strange does is just hold up a single finger, like cueing him, like this is the one chance. And I think that's the moment when Casey figured out what was going to happen next automatically, and she started getting ready to tear up. And so Thanos,
I think I'll give you, going back to the Carol Danvers thing. I kind of makes sense if she's like so super powered that she has like other things to tend to, and I can kind of see that now that I like think about it. But it's still, I still have to like think about it. Like I have to think about that justification for her just like not being around all the time, and so I still feel like it's a bit of a weakness in like the writing, either at this movie or the previous movie. But anyway, so yeah, that was I'll get over that eventually. And then I did like the Doctor Strange moment a lot. Of course, all the women heroes of the Avengers. I think we're getting a Black Widow origin story, and hopefully some more female superhero spin-offs coming down the line eventually.
Yeah.
So that was a fun moment. Sorry, we're having some connections, so it's hard for me to jump in sometimes because I'm a few seconds behind. But anyway,
that
yes,
and I'm a motor mouth.
Yeah.
So Iron Man and Thanos are going toe to toe. They're on a more even playing field now, and they're fighting. And there's a really cool moment where Thanos gets a hold of the gauntlet, but he's fighting Iron Man, and of course Iron Man controls the nanotech. So you don't see it in the camera angle, but Thanos gets the gauntlet and he goes to snap, but it's just like a regular snap and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And he looks down at the gauntlet and all the gems are gone. And then you look over at Iron Man and he's powered up and he's looking at it. And he goes to say his final line, and didn't he say, "I am Iron Man"? Because like before, Thanos was like, "I am inevitable." And then Thanos just looks at Iron Man, and Iron Man's like, "I am Iron Man." And he snaps his finger, and you start watching as Thanos' army is getting dusted. And Thanos, just looking like the most disappointed he could ever look, just sits down, sullen, maybe looking at Iron Man like, "Good game, like you bested me." But in the end, you just you have the satisfaction of watching Thanos die a second time in this movie. And for sure, he is eliminated for good unless something crazy happens with Lady Death bringing him back from the dead or something.
I was surprised that Iron Man can hold on to the Infinity Stones, because in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, they make a big deal about how Peter Quill can barely hold on to one himself because he's like half celestial or whatever. So how is it that Tony can hold on to all of the stones at the same time? I guess because the suit helps absorb some of the power or something, or I don't know.
Probably would be my guess is that his... Right, no, he is mortal, and I think it's the suit doing a lot of heavy lifting, and then the fact that Professor Hulk gave us some exposition about the stones giving off gamma radiation. So he was only able to do one snap, one bit of the power, to use all the stones to basically undo Thanos and his army. And so because of that, he obviously his entire system was radiated with gamma radiation, and so he started dying immediately. And so earlier in the movie, of course, Tony is like, "I can't rest, I have to do something, I can't sit well with this."
Yeah.
And then Pepper comes in and tells him, "You can rest now." And we have a callback to Infinity War where Peter told Iron Man, "Oh, I don't feel so good." And now Peter Parker gets to say goodbye to Iron Man, where he's like, "We did it, we won." And then he's like, "We did it, sir." And then Iron Man passes away. He sacrifices himself, which I know a lot of people have in their commentaries made note of. And I think I shared a meme photo that I shared with you about how Tony in the first Avengers movie was called out by Captain America as being like, "Oh, you would never be the one to lay down your life in a sacrificial move." And this is the only instance the way it would work. And it goes to make Doctor Strange's point about, like, if I had told you what would have needed to happen, would you have been able to do it?
Yeah.
So I think
It's
that
also
was.
a testament,
I think that was
a testament to Iron Man's development over the entire series too, as a character, becoming a team player and everything. Yeah.
He having to grow and learn from his mistakes, and they, Iron Man and Captain America having their falling out, but then re-bonding their friendship on the field of battle, and Iron Man giving his life to save the universe. And that was really moving and touching. I know Casey was crying. She was like, "Ah!" So, and I probably was too. Like, I'm not going to lie and be like, I didn't cry. Like, oh, believe me, I cried.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have, after all the battle is said and done, we have a very lovely funeral by the lake of the Stark household. And, they call back to the little trophy, the little memento that Pepper gave Tony Stark, proving that Tony has a heart. So that was on the bouquet. That was really nice. Yeah. And we got to see everyone back and paying respects.
That was probably what got me, was that statue that he pulled out, the proof that Tony has a heart. That was a very touching moment.
And there was one kid we didn't recognize when they were doing the pan shot and they were moving past the crowd of all the people there to pay their respects. There was like a teenage boy, and we were both like, "Who is that?" And I was like, I had a pretty good idea of who it was, and that was the little kid from Iron Man 3 that Iron Man crashed in that Tennessee kid's garage to help him build and recuperate. So yeah, even that boy who got to spend time with Tony Stark and learn from him came to pay his respects as well.
That's cool.
When he passed away. Yeah, he was. You saw him briefly when they were doing the panning shot, and then of course Morgan and Happy Hogan had a very touching moment that was a callback to the first Iron Man movie as well, where they were like discussing how they felt, and Morgan was like, "I'm sad," and then Happy's like, "Well, you hungry?" And she's like, "Yeah, I want a cheeseburger." And then Happy remembers what Tony said when he got out of captivity from the 10 rings, and he was like, "I just want a cheeseburger." And then Happy was just like, "Kid, I'm going to give you all the cheeseburgers you could ever want to eat."
Yeah.
And so after the funeral, we have a very lovely wrapping up and setting up of the future. Of course, Thor appoints Valkyrie as the new queen of New Asgard, and how she's, because I don't know how it works. Maybe king is just title, but whatever. I you can send me hate mail if I got the politics wrong. But Thor appoints Valkyrie to be the new leader of New Asgard, and Thor is now joining the Guardians of the Galaxy. So hopefully we'll be seeing Chris Hemsworth back in Guardians Volume 3, and Quill has begun his search for 2014 version of Gamora. So he's trying to find her. Hopefully she did not get dusted when Iron Man snapped his finger.
I really like New Asgard. It looks like a cool place to visit. Have a little weekend getaway, Airbnb or something. It'd be really nice.
Exactly. And then the ending of the movie, we have Steve Rogers going solo, and he has the job of returning all the Infinity Stones and Mjolnir to their original places in the timeline. But then when he's supposed to come back, he doesn't show up. And then Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, is looking over to a nearby bench, and he kind of tells Hulk and Falcon, he's like, "Look over there, there's somebody sitting on a bench," and sure enough, it's an old man with an Iron Man shield. And they go over and they look, and it's Steve Rogers, all properly aged out, like a proper 90-year-old man that he's supposed to be. And they see a wedding ring on his finger, and it's in this moment that elderly Steve Rogers passes on the shield and the mantle of Captain America to Sam Wilson, the Falcon. And I thought it was really touching how Sam looks at the wedding ring, and he's like, "Well, want to tell me about her?" And then Steve Rogers thinks about it for a moment, and he's kind of like, "No, I'm not." And it kind of calls back a moment to me. There's a moment in, have you ever seen Saving Private Ryan?
I'm not sure if I have. If I have, it was a long time ago, and I don't remember much about it. But I don't think I ever have actually.
It's a very moving war movie, but there is a scene in it where, of course, Tom Hanks is this regimental squad commander, and he's talking about what he was doing before the war, and he's like, "I'm a teacher, and my wife, she prunes and takes care of the rose garden." And the other soldiers ask him, like, "Oh, tell us about your wife," and all that stuff. And he's kind of like, no, that one's for me. So I thought it was kind of like in that same vein of like a World War II veteran, having that mentality of holding on to that peace that he has. And, of course, the very moving arc of Captain America, this entire series, these entire films, is he's been so much about putting the needs of others above and before himself, and serving his country and serving his fellow man and doing what's right and fighting for justice and truth. And then in this movie, we finally get to see Captain America move on, and he chooses to stay in the past. And a very moving way to end the movie, we go back to the past, we see a nice little 1950s style house, and we hear a song playing on a record machine, and it pans in, and you see Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers slow dancing, and Steve Rogers finally gets to make good on that promise about giving Peggy that dance.
Yeah.
And that's the way that we end the movie. And I just thought that was so beautiful.
Yeah, I liked it too. That was you make a good point about how it was like he had done his time doing his service, and then he finally like took something for himself to have that life that he always missed because of the accident. Yeah, good point. Yeah, I like that ending a lot too.
And so I think this epic conclusion to the Infinity Saga, and in a couple months' time during our summer vacations, hopefully we'll have a chance to get to go see Spider-Man Far From Home, because as the trailers pointed out, Spider-Man is taking place in a post-Avengers Endgame world where Tony Stark is no more. And we get to see him team up in Europe with Quentin Beck, a.k.a. Mysterio, and they're fighting some creatures called the Elementals. So it'll be interesting to see how the new phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will kick off.
Yeah. Yeah, I like where it's going.
Yeah. So what do you think? We started this journey now 11 years ago of watching the first Iron Man movie and them having a shot and a hope and a prayer that maybe this could turn into something more. And 11 years later, we finally got a resolution to probably one of the best ways to adapt a comic book series. This felt very much like a serialized comic book series. We obviously lived through and witnessed a great cinematic event in history. But I don't know, any final thoughts or feelings about Avengers Endgame?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. We got lucky because we got Harry Potter coming out.
And Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. So the thing that makes me want to do is it makes me want to go back and revisit these old ones that I really liked, like the first, the Iron Men, the Irons Men 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
So such classics. I want to go back and revisit some of the ones that I only saw once or twice, especially those solo old movies and stuff. I think it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I want to go see it again for sure.
I know, I do too. I offered to go with a friend, and I don't know how you prepared for the movie, but I definitely partook in a fast, and I ate very little, and I didn't have any drinks that entire day. I skipped my morning coffee, and I sat through the entire movie without having to take a pee break, so I got my nice little social media badge to say I took no pee breaks during Avengers Endgame.
Nice. I didn't know there was a social media badge for it, but I did the same thing. I was like, all right, 1 or 2 hours before, I'm not drinking anything. I'm not going to eat anything. I'm not going to drink anything. That's my cutoff time. So it's highly effective, and it works. I try to keep a 1 hour rule for any movie, but if I just push it to 2 hours, it works so much better. So
right.
I just got to stick to it. But yeah, it's funny because I did the same thing.
And, so I think, so now, I'm sure we have our Patreon homework to finish up, but I think that's a great way to kind of end our mid-season here, so we can take some time for R&R, to collect our thoughts, to get our new home sorted out, to go pick up our new cars and whatnot, and enjoy our summer and have some family time, especially since you have a new niece that you have to go dote upon. So
we were talking about, you were saying endings. I just remembered there was we were kind of waiting for a post-credits scene, but there was no post-credits. I read online that it was just the sound of Iron Man working on his first suit at the very end. Did you stay for that? Did you hear that?
I did. We did stay for it, and I know one fraternity brother in our viewing had seen it the day before, and he was talking about, there's nothing at the end. But I stayed. I listened, and I heard the sound, and I know New Rockstar's YouTube channel has already started to theorize that that's probably like a clarion call for the next person who's going to be, quote-unquote, taking the position or the mantle of Iron Man. So who's going to be the new leader as far as Avengers of the Future goes. Obviously, the Spider-Man Far From Home is bringing that into question. But I think an obvious choice would be Captain Marvel, because I think in the comics, Captain Marvel has been a leader for the Avengers team. And the fact that it's named after her old Air Force call sign, I think she would be a great leader for any new big epic Avengers movie that comes out. And of course, now with the acquisition and merger of Fox Movie and Television, hopefully once we have the Dark Phoenix X-Men movie come out, and some of these other projects wrap up that have already been in the pipeline, hopefully now with the explanation of alternate timelines entering into the equation, we might finally be able to port over X-Men and stuff, because apparently that's what they're saying Quentin Beck is. They're like, Quentin Beck is from Earth, but he's not from our Earth. So, and I watched a Kevin Smith reaction, Kevin Smith, the director, do a reaction to the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. And he's like, man, I wrote for Quentin Beck. I love him. And he's like, but don't listen to Quentin Beck. That dude is a liar. So already Kevin Smith's radar is up, and he's like, I don't know if I believe that. But so, and if you want a fun way to have an analysis of the Avengers Endgame as well, go to Kevin Smith's YouTube channel, and he does an entire breakdown, kind of like we did with the Avengers Endgame, but of course he gets emotional too, and so he's crying and stuff like that and calling out his favorite parts. So go check out Kevin Smith.
If Captain Marvel's going to be the head of the new Avengers, she's got to spend a lot more time on Earth. That's all I'm going to say. She can't be flying around.
And I think and I think she'll get that chance. I think now with the Celestials and the Eternals, like, I know there's an Eternals movie coming out, and maybe we'll finally get a chance to revisit the Inhumans and maybe do them more justice. Maybe we'll get to have more cosmic level events brought down to the Earth level, and I know people are already making their predictions of what's going to happen in the next phase. Is it going to be the Ten Rings visiting again? Are we going to have somebody like a time-traveling warlord, Krang the Conqueror, I think his name is? Or are we going to have Doctor Doom? Are we going to have Galactus and Silver Surfer? Like, there's a lot of options on the table now. So
yeah. I forgot about Silver Surfer and Galactus and Doctor Doom and all those people. Yeah. I
know. Then we can finally do a Fantastic Four movie the right way. I mean, I still have love in my heart for the Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Ian Gruffin, and Mike Chiklis movies. We'll just kind of politely smile at Fan Four Stick. But okay, are we ready to do like our little ending spiel and get into our Patreon stuff?
I think so. That was it's an
exhaustive
journey that we went on. Yeah.
Yes.
So in the meantime, during our summer break here, be sure to check out our website, blanktape.show, for all of our episode tracks from the past, present, and future. No time heist required. Just go to our website. You can also find links to all the topics we discussed, or you can send us an email.
To stay up to date with the podcast, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter by searching for @BlankTapeShow. You can also listen to our show on YouTube by searching for Blank Tape Show Podcast.
You can find the podcast through Overcast and Apple Podcasts, or go to our website and save our RSS feed URL directly to the podcast app of your choice.
And finally, listeners, if you would like to contribute and become a part of the Blank Generation, consider becoming our patron on Patreon by searching for our page, patreon.com/BlankTapeShow. And with that...
I snap on your general direction.
I'm fading out of this time!